Jaeden. I'm a junior political science major at Morehouse College. I think what drew me to the political science department at Morehouse was mostly my interest in political theory. So I came in really like trying to get into like the organizing scene in Atlanta. And I'd been organizing around like policing and prison abolition for quite a while. And so I think when I got to Atlanta, I kind of met a lot of different Black queer organizers there, and a lot of them are, some of my best friends now. And I actually came in a sociology major. So I was kind of taking different sociology classes on gender and sexuality, and I really enjoyed those. But I think I needed a little bit more theory, because what I was, running into were these problems regarding anti-Blackness and regarding, this kind of dearth in thinking with Black feminists and thinking with Black queer theorists and thinking with different people who were kind of at the cutting edge of Black studies and that were kind of familiar to people in organizing spaces, but weren't really familiar to people in the classroom. And there was one professor in the political science department who was teaching more Black Marxists and different Black political theorists that, you don't really see throughout the rest of the departments. So that kind of made me make the switch. I started initially thinking with a lot of different Black feminists, from Saidiya Hartman, Angela Davis, Hortense Spillers, and even before that, I was reading like Bell Hooks. But I think it was really thinking with Angela Davis and a couple of books written about her that made me start wanting to think about The Fugitive. And so I'm kind of like in the middle of cultivating this project on Black fugitives and Black fugitivity, and what does it mean to be Black and try and escape all of these different technologies of capture, whether it be the prison or police, or cis heteropatriarchy. Like how are all of these different things kind of modes of capture, and how do they come to bear on Black queer fugitives and their positionality in the world? And I've actually just completed like a prospectus on that, because I'm a Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellow, and I did a summer institute last week that I just finished up. But yeah, I've been really thinking about that. And in the political science department, we have a class that I just took called Black Political Thought, that's kind of helped me out a lot with engagements in Black Marxism and Black feminism. So I think those things have been really helpful at Morehouse and beyond. So for sure. Because I think this kind of moment following George Floyd's death has kind of radicalized a lot of people. I think it's got people to start thinking about policing in ways that they haven't really before. We've, at least for me, like I've been aware of things like this since at least Trayvon Martin's death, and that was probably like the beginning of high school. So I've been thinking about these things for a while, and it seems as if it's come to a point where everybody is kind of tired and everybody is kind of exhausted with it. And I think that has opened up a lot of minds and a lot of possibilities to, what might a world where we don't have to watch, Black people die, day in and day out at the hands of police look like? And more importantly, what might a world that doesn't require, anti-Black violence, period, look like? Whether that be in the form of murder or in the form of, lesser, more mundane things, whether it's like a traffic stop or like, some other, more minimal form of brutality that Black people endured on the daily. So I think it's a form of radicalization that makes us question, like, what do we need to do to end police violence, rather than, taking up these sort of reactive postures like prosecution and, how do we, hold people accountable after the fact. So we've seen that in the form of defunding the police. We've seen that in the push to abolish the police. And we've seen organizers around the country make that push and make a lot of people listen. So I think this is another opportunity for me to kind of amplify that message. For me, I think, I've been dealing with a lot of um, death throughout this year, So when I see George Floyd, when I see Breonna Taylor, when I see all the black trans women, Rhea Milton, like it's not just something that is, disconnected. I've had family members die in this past year that I know it's not just an isolated incident. There's this long series of Black people dying that isn't reducible to police violence, but it's a systemic thing. It's something that's structural. And how do we begin to address those social problems as they are concealed by police violence? So when we talk about how we send police to deal with homelessness, how we send police to deal with mental health, how we send police to deal with drug abuse, how do the ways that the police show up in our lives obfuscate all of these different issues and all of these different social problems that contribute to the way that my family members are dying right now. It doesn't have to be, this overt form of violence or brutality, but there's very small ways in which people are dying and state violence is enabling it day after day, that I think it's important to address by way of police violence and by way of this moment that, again, we're seeing people be tired and exhausted by it. So we see a world without police, glimpses of a world without police all the time. One of my friends, his name is Jaeden Johnson, who's at Northwestern right now, a graduate student at Northwestern. One of the questions he always asks when people, ask him about, what do we do without police? He's like, how many times have you called the police in your life? And, for me, the answer is zero. Like, I've never called the police. And the next question is then, what did you do, when you were in a situation where harm was occurring or violence was occurring? How did you deal with that? And whether it was through talking out something or, calling a friend or family member, reaching out to someone that you knew was kind of like an expert in whatever the crisis was, those are forms of, mutual aid. Those are forms of being resourceful without relying on state violence. And it's something that I think Black people in particular have had to know and to call upon because the state hasn't been able to protect us. I remember giving a speech in high school when we were talking about gun violence, because I was trying to push back against this notion that, gun violence is like this isolated issue. Because for me, gun violence and police violence can't be separated. And for me, more police doesn't equal safety. So if we respond to gun violence in schools, for instance, by increasing police presence, then that's not something that solves the issue for me, because I've never felt safe in the presence of a police officer, and I've never felt as if calling a police officer is going to be, something that solves my issue. So it's imagining the ways that we already take care of one another and show up for one another without the state, and finding ways to institutionalize those things and make those things more permanent, and fund them, give more resources to community programs and mental health experts and different people who are skilled at responding to crises without violence. And I think that's the world that we need to work towards. Plug into different organizers in your different communities. I'm very much indebted to organizers in Atlanta like Deshaun Harrison and my friend Jordan Mulkey. You might want to check out aidtoabolition.com. They have like this, steps, 8 different steps to abolition. Criticalresistance.org is also a really good website to check out.